Burns. If you enjoy what we do, please subscribe so that you never miss an episode, and tell your friends, family, teammates, clubmates, and the people you sit next to in the stand all about us. And if you'd like to leave a positive review, it would really help us with the old algorithm, as it helps other people find us. Thanks for listening, and here's today's show.
It's the offside line.
This is not soccer. Is that clear?
Stanger could be there. It's a try. A magnificent try for the 21-year-old.
Brilliant. Oh, that's brilliant.
Hello, Offside Liners. Welcome to this week's show. Today's podcast is sponsored by Breadalbane Finance, trusted commercial finance brokers based in Edinburgh, working across Scotland. Visit breadalbanefinance.co.uk for more information, and we'll put some in our show notes. We're with Jamie, Lindsay, and Roddy Grant here today. How are you boys? Last time I saw you, Jamie, was in the midst of a double header at Prestonfield. How have you recovered from that? And tell us about those two fundraisers that you were at.
My bounce back ability remains one of my key strengths, so I'm feeling okay today. It was a big week. We were at the My Name is Doddy Foundation dinner at Prestonfield on Thursday night. That was an incredible evening. It was so cool. As you all know, I'm very passionate about that charity, and I love the people in the community around it. That word community again springing out at me. And then on Friday, well, I'm not going into the timings, but we got home at a certain hour on Friday morning, and then it was straight back to Prestonfield for the Bill McLaren long lunch, where, we had an informal catch up and a brief on the pod.
We did.
What a day! What an afternoon! It's fantastic.
You'd been better just sleeping under one of the tables at the Prestonfield house, Jamie.
Mrs. Lindsay suggested that. I wasn't sure if she was serious or not. So
I'm sure Mrs. Lindsay will be delighted to see how much you have gifted to charity over those last couple of years.
I'm too scared to even look at the bank balance. It's crazy, but it was really good. It was really good. I would say the Bill McLaren one was as busy as I've seen it, because this is a packed calendar for charity dinners, and Prestonfield just goes and goes and goes. Yeah. But I thought it was really well attended.
I'd been at Wooden Spoon the Friday before, and that was packed as well.
Yeah, brilliant. No such thing as charity fatigue.
No, absolutely not. So we're going to come to Scotland in due course, but we're going to start off in the domestic game, and let's just discuss some of the weekend's results from the men's Prem. There was the rescheduled game from Storm Amy, and Ayr welcomed Hoyk to Millbrae and won 55-14. In the women's Prem on Friday, Hillhead Jordan Hill entertained Cartha and entertained themselves, winning 41-0. Then on Saturday, Biggar went to Geary and won 29-24. Watsonians went across town to Heriots and won 65-22. Stirling County welcomed Corstorphine and won 62-26. Watsonians are now putting some clear space between themselves and Heriots in third for the title playoff shot to take down the runaway leaders Stirling County. And in the Scottish Cup, Watsonians beat Melrose 42-33. Biggar beat Mar 25-24. Curry beat Stirling County 45-26, and GHA beat Glasgow Accies 17-12 in a rerun of last year's final, and Musselburgh lost at home 31-47 to Heriots. All right, guys, into Clubland, where the company does an incredible amount of work, and you do Club of the Month, you do a lot of charity work. Tell us a bit about your involvement in that, and what does it do for you as a business as well?
I feel that the way that Breadalbane needs to communicate its products and services are through communities directly. High street banks, traditional lenders are retrenching from the high streets. We want to move in and fill that gap, but you can't just put a social media post up and say this is what we're doing. You can't just turn up one day and do one event and think that you've cracked it. You have to really integrate yourself into communities. As Barney well knows, my background is in community rugby. When I first moved to Edinburgh, I didn't know anyone, didn't have a clue where to start. I actually went down to Accies for my very first training session, but found myself just along the road at Bangham with Trinity. And for what was an FP school, still an FP club back then, I was welcomed incredibly. I still have amazingly close friends from that rugby club, and that developed my appreciation and love for what rugby can do for you individually and put you into a community. So our way of infiltrating communities, for want of a better phrase, is to use rugby as a conduit for that. And so if we can do something with the local rugby club, what we find is within that club there's probably the same makeup of person. The treasurer will be a local accountant or the local bank manager back in the day. There'll be a fixture secretary who's connected to the round table in the town. It's really easy for us to get our tentacles into that community by going first into the rugby club. But you have to give. You have to give. You have to earn trust. You have to earn respect's not the right word, but you have to prove your worth. You have to show that you're not there to just take from that community. You have to show that you're willing to give something back. And that's really what spawned our business strategy of getting into communities through rugby. And it does pay dividends. We find that the more integrated we get into communities, the more referral work we get back to us, the warmer those introductions are, the more we're... Our job in financial services is all about breaking down barriers and having pretty honest and open conversations. When you establish trust in communities, you're able to accelerate how quickly you can achieve that with local businesses. And it's something I'd love to do everything that we're asked to do, but some of it's a stretch too far. But we'll keep doing it through the Offside Line, doing whatever clubs we can. And yeah, it's a really solid business model. And I would encourage any business out there, if you're looking for a way to separate yourself from the competition, look at supporting community rugby or sport in general, because not just financial payback, but again, we've spoken about this, Barney, it's kind of good for your soul on a Saturday afternoon just watching local communities still turning out 15s, and the fundamentals haven't changed since the 70s, 80s when we were growing up with community rugby. And
I mean, I wouldn't say that in Jamie's defence. I mean, he's talked a lot about why it's good for the business, but I mean, he does absolutely love it. You can tell he loves it.
Absolute noise. Absolute noise.
You know, and I bump into him in random places watching random games. So it's So I mean, I suspect it helps that you do quite enjoy just the whole.
If I didn't like it, it's really hard work. Really hard work. But no, I do love it, and the kids love it, and I'll get to as many games as I possibly can. But it's I'm
off to work, guys. I'm off to
work.
I'm by your side.
Again,
And Roddy, like the grassroots stuff is something you're very passionate about, because you've a long career as a professional rugby player. Then you went off to coaching, and you've been in Ulster, and then you've done Georgia, and when you're back now, you're working with Glasgow. But it's not just the professional side of the game that excites you, is it? So tell us a wee bit about the stuff that you're interested in doing across the community game and the grassroots.
Yeah, I think both. So it's such a big topic, but an important topic. So everything from, I think when you have kids as well, one, you realize you reflect on a lot on your own upbringing or what's shaped you, and sport's so important. So within that, me and Jamie both got girls. Hockey's a big school sport, but rugby wise, for boys, obviously it's great. It's growing now with girls as well, and the women's game. But especially for boys, it's so formative. It's formative for me and my career and who I am. But grassroots as well, it's the lifeblood of the sport. And there's obviously, there's less and less rugby and money, or certainly as the top end of the game on the international Six Nations booming. November Test sold out 2 weeks in a row with Murrayfield, and that's going. But the professional leagues are struggling. The Premiership, obviously, it's well documented that there needs to be growth. Playing numbers are dwindling. Like the stats are frightening. Saw one come out maybe a year or two ago, and it was rugby's down below Xboxing. And
the list of it was like some of
it was, what do you call it? It was one of the big auditors or something did a kind of, who was it? I can't remember, but it was crazy. It was
maybe Deloitte or something, but it was something like that, and it was even in the field, like boxing's a bigger participating sport and grown more than rugby, which is all the the head discussions and things. However, it's so important, one, to grow it, but keep the importance of it. And it's multifaceted, that you need money, you need to generate money, which is why, like Breadalbane, it's so impressive seeing sponsorship investors come in, because it's the easiest thing to be judgmental on or being critical on it, but someone's got to do it. And like Breadalbane and Jamie, like, put a huge amount in it and in the sport, and we need to retain numbers. And Rob Moffat, hero of Scottish rugby, is doing a great job in Melrose, and you hear the challenges of keeping playing numbers in. trying to grow it, like it's like anything, any big numbers or pyramid of like military or selection. Like if you don't have a big amount at the bottom, your top end's going to suffer. Like it just is what it is, you know. So you need numbers at the bottom. It's so important to generate that, adapt. Whether it's clubs to evolve, things are changing. Like I think so much in society probably now, but across the board and games, and I think rugby now has to accept what is, and change has to happen, and everyone's aware of that. But the investment comes back to the Breadalbane piece.
Yeah,
and
but I think you're underselling the people part of that as well, though. Yeah, you can cut checks and do stuff like that, but as much as I do go down and watch games, I'm not the one that chooses the Thursday night coaching. And you just mentioned Moff there. Look at that Melrose Academy setup, and you've got Robbie, you've got Chegs. I know what they do week on week, and it is tens and tens of hours of prep, tens and tens of hours on the pitch, keeping these kids engaged and motivated, keeping the numbers consistent, and they're supported by, again, another 10 or 12 people around about them. And I know that's the same in almost every other club we look at. It's the people still need to be, which is what makes rugby, which is from my connection to the community part of it comes from. But yeah, you can have the guys that are cutting the checks, fine, right, great, we'll get a wee bit of recognition. But the unsung people, the heroes, the guys who are giving up their time, and that's where, again, that stuff we did with Offside Line, I felt was so important, because just giving them a bit of recognition was.
It's interesting to hear Roddy talking about. I mean, because most of your rugby experience over here has been in the pro game. Although you've always been, because I know you coached at Accies and stuff, so you've been involved. But I think there has been a shift in the last year or so. I think because the pro game is relatively new, there's a big focus on like how do we make the pro game work, how do we make money out of it, how do we push that on, and we kind of let this disconnect between that game and the kind of community game and stuff that you're talking about there, Roddy, kind of develop. And I think in the last couple of years there's been a kind of recognition that you can't have one without the other, both ways, and the pro game, what happens at Murrayfield on Saturday or Sunday, maybe not what happened yesterday, but what happens over the weekend, that will attract people into rugby. There will be people that just haven't had a rugby connection before, and then it's a big day out. But really what's really going to sustain it is creating rugby fans when they're 8 years old, who are rugby fans for the rest of their life, and they're there, come hell or high water. And vice versa, and that's how you sustain the interest in it, but that's how you sustain the players in it. But for the community game, you also need the buy-in from the pro game or the elite level of the game to kind of sell it for. So I think there's been a coming together in Scottish rugby. There's still a long way to go. That the two realise that they have to work together a bit more. Or they're mutually beneficial. Does that make sense? I
also think, just touching on what Jamie said there, that the volunteers are huge. Everything, refereeing, parents, helping, coaches. Like that's huge. I think, controversially, I suppose, would be. So I was at Grangemouth in the morning yesterday, and then was luckily done before, so I could watch the rugby.
Lucky Grangemouth.
We can get it live. So Dom Ward, who is a big fan, he's a Grangemouth Stags man. So we're not slagging off Grangemouth. Dom.
No. Well, this was for the athletics at Grangemouth, sort of with my daughters. But it was you realise, especially with kids, and until you are involved or have a touch point with anything grassroots, it's a bit like you don't really know what's going on. But it's this one thing I've found, which I think could also be a big part of the drive or the education piece, is the parents. So like you've always got the same people who volunteer and who give so much time and effort and everyone's got busy lives. But I've noticed there's still a large proportion of you asking for help in terms of volunteers, and same parents will just come down and watch. You're like, I get it. It's whatever, it's rain or that, like, but everyone's in the same boat. If no one volunteers, it doesn't happen. So I suppose I'm just trying to say or highlight or share that a lot of it also, there's the education piece to the parents, not just the organizations, everyone's accountable for our game, that everyone needs to do their bit, and not just be like, oh, it's someone else's, they'll do it, or like, so go back to the finance thing, or if Jamie goes, someone else will sponsor Melrose or the Sevens or whatever, it's that mentality is totally off. Whereas everyone needs to do it.
Yeah.
Volunteers. Another dad will take the session this weekend, but it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
For growth.
No, exactly. It's how you kind of harness that, isn't it, getting people into it? Because not everybody can coach rugby, but there's always stuff that needs to be done, you know. But
as has been evidenced. Talking about myself, Barney.
And myself, yeah. You know, but like, you know, just getting these people along to, you know, do the hot dogs after the game or stuff. You know, yeah, you're right. Just, you know, trying. Yeah, I suppose that's one of the challenges. You know, I think people don't appreciate how much goes into running a club. So there's maybe a bit of a disconnect. You know, people, you know, come and they go, "Oh, it's great. My son gets rugby along. My daughter gets rugby along there." But there's more. You know, it's a hell of a lot of work.
Oh, it's huge.
But you didn't come up through the Scottish system. So what was your experience growing up in terms of that structure around a school or club or whatever? In terms of, was it all teachers or was it?
Yeah, it was all So it was. So I grew up. So essentially high school in South Africa. So we had, which was quite different. Coming over here would be, and the culture's very different there, and school sports, you know, and Northern Ireland or Scotland schools, like, you know, for instance, or Schools Cup is a huge thing, and it's in comparison, my rival games would get 20,000 people there. It's all televised. There's a downside to it, obviously, in terms of, I don't know, burnout, or it's almost too professional at that young age. Like now, my old school, they've got drones and training and full-time X, Y, and Zs. So there's a pro and con to everything, but very different. So it was all school sport, not club. So a lot of here, it's all your independent schools will be generally school, but there's also a club facility. I actually really like, I think it's this year, both certainly with the rugby, school rugby, it's opened up a little bit more to a few clubs in with the independent schools. I think from the outside, I suppose, but being involved with as a parent through the schools, I think that's brilliant. So that's been a big plus. But yeah, it would be school based, but staff, I suppose. But within that, there's always, like all parents, I suppose, there's a lot of input that goes into them. I think an anecdote on that was, I don't know, for the listeners, or, you know, everyone remember Jason O'Halloran, the Scotland coach, attack coach, Kiwi, awesome bloke, one of the best rugby men I've come across. And I always remember asking him, he'd always go, presumably when a Scotland game wasn't on or at a weekend, but out with, he'd always go to, and Vern Cotter was the same, they'd always go to school rugby games. So I think at the time I was coaching, when I was still playing, whenever it was, I was coaching with Murky. So I then coached Murky, so like Magnus, Bradbury and all that, I coached them at school. But I always remember seeing them come down and they were standing on their own just watching rugby. And I was a bit like, oh, what are you guys doing here? And they're like, oh, wherever they are, they always, love rugby and watching. But school rugby was their like heartbeat as to a culture, how a team plays, what players make them take. And it was a really cool... Yes.
But this is where, and I'm not going to toot your horn, one, because you're wearing a Glasgow top, and two, because you don't need me to. But there's something in that, because I know what you are. I know what you're like as a character. You're one of the most positive, enthusiastic, and giving people I know. And the fact you're coaching guys like Maggie, and knowing Maggie the way I do now, watching him interact, and again, I have this thing where some of the guys, when the camera's on them, will act in a certain way, when the camera's off, they act in a completely different way. The likes of Maggie, I've seen him do stuff. His engagement with kids' generation, knowing what it means, is the values that you've obviously coached at that younger age, not just you, but the values you've coached, obviously do feed into these guys, and then they're carrying it forward. And that's where the future of the game is so important, because the values are what make us pretty special. And it was something you just mentioned, Barney. I was just going to ask the question without talking about yesterday, too much, but you were just talking about the fan base and how many players, if you like, were at Murrayfield yesterday. That is the first time I've heard pretty aggressive booing at the end of the game, justified or otherwise. It's a completely different conversation, but the first time I've ever heard it like that, and I was thinking, bloody hell, this is a turn. Do people just not understand that we're quite a polite sport? We don't do that kind of thing. We still politely applaud as the team walk off, but
Yeah, we talked about that off air. It was extraordinary. I think it's the first time I've ever heard them being booed off.
Yeah.
It kind of happens in France all the time, but it doesn't happen here.
Did that happen in South Africa?
Yeah, it would have. South Africa have been all right the last little while, but it definitely would
around
have.
2018, 2017, 18,
Peter
they were getting booed off.
era,
Yeah.
and yeah, there definitely has been not for a long time.
In fairness, like we'll maybe talk about it later. I was interested speaking to the players afterwards, and they were asked about that, and all of them, they didn't shirk it. They can sometimes be quite not precious, but prickly about that kind of stuff, and all of them like, we deserved that. It was quite interesting, like just how, like I'm not trying to defend, or but like these guys kind of understood the level of frustration there, which was
Yeah, Sione spoke after and said that we're going to cop it. We deserve to.
Yeah. Anyway, you did well turning that into a slightly negative note, Jamie.
That's a good news story till then, Jamie. Come on.
I was waiting for you to turn negative. That was one of the longest I've gone in this pod with more than once.
I was thinking we should kind of highlight Roddy's connection. So Roddy, obviously, people know Roddy because he played for Edinburgh and Scotland. A couple of years ago, we did the best team of guys that weren't capped by Scotland, and Roddy was in quite a lot of the teams that were selected. But let's not dwell on that. But
I'm happy to talk about
it. But just generally, so your connection. So then you're away coaching in Ulster. You coached at Georgia, and you're back. Explain to us what you're working with Glasgow and Breadalbane. Got it right there. Got it right.
Nailed it.
But do you want to explain that a bit? But just in terms of the connection.
Yeah. So, came mum's side from the Borders, so came over to Gala, but had a year with the Border Reivers, and then their last year, which was really interesting actually. Now we had some team, but so many people who've been influential in Scottish rugby, played with Gregor at the Border Reivers, Chris Cussiter, anyway. Played Edinburgh and then retired, and then coached Edinburgh for 2 years, Ulster 5, Georgia for a couple of tournaments, and then a bit of time off, and then was in with Breadalbane, which was awesome, and then coaching Glasgow this season with Franco Smith, so coaching forwards, really breakdown. Really interesting that it's sort of his take. He's totally different to any other head coach I've had, or his philosophy on things. It's a very collaborative approach, both from coaches, sort of what areas you're doing, through to players. I was saying last weekend that it's really challenged my take on high performance. Like, it is high performance. We're going really well this season, won the league, but the environment's very different to any other high performance environment I've been in. Lack of a better word, relaxed, which probably also means confidence. Guys are confident, mature. Like the young players, you forget now where like rugby's moved on loads. So even one of the players I was talking about, going to the Scotland All Black game, and we're in the Arnold Clark tent, which was awesome, but it was really cool. There was live music, and I'd sort of said, this time last year, Adam Ash was DJing in it. I think he might be there again, and I can't even remember who the player was, but he wasn't so young, as in purely academy, maybe early 20s. He was a bit like, oh yeah, and I was like, oh, Adam Ash. He's like, yeah. I was like, he used to play for Scotland not long ago.
No,
like,
he got like 50 odd caps.
Don't tell Ashley that; he'll be absolutely devastated.
He's the skincare guy.
Well, that's what he is now. Yeah.
But so like everything. But say pure sport, grace and heart. Like all these, but same as me. No one would have seen anything playing. But that's also, I think, accepting what is. Mm-hmm. It is what it is. Like the game moves on and people change. And anyway, so sorry, go back. So that was the connection with Scotland, Glasgow into now.
And are you still doing stuff with Jamie or Breadalbane?
Yes, yeah.
I've got it right twice I've pronounced it right.
So, but it's really cool that, like now, so break from the URC, and then, you get involved with Doddy Aid, and there's some really cool charity through to grassroots, through to rugby, Merrill's Academy, Merrow Sevens, like it's, Sick Kids Hospital, the Cameron House. It's really cool that you you get a mix of interesting people. I suppose a big driver for me is anything high performance, but interesting people has always been. The older I've got, the more I've realized that's actually what I enjoy, I suppose. So you're around, and in the rugby sense, I think there's such a difference, and from playing to coaching. And so, like, I feel I can say this because I've then played and coached, is very different to just being a player where you're like, you don't have a clue what coaches do, and vice versa. Like the only similarity is rugby. Apart from that, the job title couldn't be more different. Job skills couldn't be more different. So actually then with Jamie, learn a lot from him. You come across partners, CEOs of various companies. They're really cool, impressive people that you learn a lot from them. It's a pleasure being around them, or through to hearing how they talk about leadership or management, or like Jamie, how does he manage his time, manages people?
So is that something, because I think when you're at Ulster, you're full-time at Ulster, so probably didn't have much of that other part of your life going on, in terms of, or have you always been kind of...
No, I've always tried to be busy with other things or stimulation, or was hacking through an MBA in Ulster, and then other bits and bobs. Like in Ulster, I did it's actually some funny stories from it. But on a Monday night, I'd feed the homeless. So there's a few like genuine near-death experiences with that.
Wow.
No, genuinely there was genuine. You get death threats every single Monday night. No, you sort of knew that going in. So always try to be that. I think more on a, philosophical sense is, I think the more you're inclined that you'll do your best job at anything is whatever you're at, whatever you do, you're all in your focus. But if you're going to benefit or get stimulated from, it's like a player, like I get it, it's all important, but we all talk about it as, well, it would be worthwhile to do some studying on the side or some work experience where you can. I think it's hypocritical for anyone to say to a 50-year-old person working in wherever, in the corporates, of going, oh, like, why shouldn't they pick up a musical instrument, or why shouldn't they do charity work, or why shouldn't they do some fundraising, or why shouldn't they do any self-development in anything? I suppose that's it. It's the self-development piece so I've always tried to do something, and it sort of changes, whether it's more sport or jiu-jitsu, or you come away CrossFit, or you come away from that and then you invest in something. Whereas now I think I'm old and battered that the intellectual, social stimulation is a big thing for me.
Well, it is.
No.
And so, the way Roddy and I got put in touch was, I was over in, I think it might be in Benetton with Edinburgh, and we were flying back, and I was just sat next to Tomar Robertson on the plane, and Robbo said, "You should meet a mate of mine. You guys are tight as two coats of paint. You're pretty good pals." And Robbo said, "There's a mate of mine." And at the time, I think you were back. You were in camp in Georgia, but then you were back for some dead period, and you were back in Georgia and back. And because of, again, the way you are, you can't sit still. You need some kind of stimulation to keep you going. And you were, as an example, and if we can put a message out to any player of any level, start looking at life after rugby at the earliest possible opportunity. Start looking at other options, because not everybody will transition into coaching. Not everybody has a ready-made career in media. There's the vast majority will need.
There's only a handful of those jobs.
Yeah, there is. Exactly.
And also, not everyone will stay in coaching as well. Yeah. So like, and so I
Or
love that.
media.
So I was so left Ulster, and then so I had the sort of camps, I suppose, with Georgia, i.e. the Six Nations, and then the summer tour, and so I was in, and then Jamie was, and I said, I asked, can I come in for some work experience? And I then loved it, and must have shown it enough that then he was, keen to keep using me, type of thing. And but it also was or working, but it was equally, I think, anything it's keep busy, but also like keep stimulated. And it was great. Like, I learnt a lot from, say, in between that period of, say, Six Nations with Georgia and then going into a summer tour, Ireland, the Springboks. Like, I genuinely was a better version of myself because I was at whatever event or meeting a partner of any of the big corporates. I could go in and bluff my way, but have a conversation with them. That's also, I don't know, not takes a bit of courage, but you've got to have some sort of personal skills to speak to these high performers. That then I could go to Georgia and speak to some scary rugby players. Mm-hmm. So that was the sort of link.
So we said, Roddy, we weren't going to get into kind of the nitty gritty of Scottish rugby politics, but it sounds very like to get a job at Red Bull or something. We won't talk about that. We won't talk about that.
I'll get shot for that.
Well, maybe you can talk about this then, because putting aside the Red Bull stuff, putting aside the booing at Murrayfield yesterday, Gregor Townsend's contract expires at the end of the World Cup, and Franco's lasts another year. So it seems to make sense that the succession planning will be Gregor sees out the World Cup, and then Franco will move upstairs to Scotland. Your experiences with him, how do you think he would manage in an international setup? He's obviously done it before with Italy, but how do you think what you've seen of him at Glasgow, would that transfer into an international setup where he has much less time with the players, and it's not ever about developing players, really, it's about dealing with what is fed up to you from the professional teams?
Yeah, so I suppose, just to be clear to this, on Franco, like hugely impressed by him. He's very different, and not for the sake of being different. He's not gimmicky. He's very authentic as to who he is and what he speaks about. So that's a huge compliment above any rugby element, and that's. But yeah, I've been really impressed with him. I think it's interesting as well. So go back to sort of personal then experience. Was first time I'd coached international rugby was Georgia, and that was going in. I was like, oh god, like 1 week prep, and then we play Ireland. We got players coming from the top 14, and for only having coached URC teams, you've got a full pre-season, and I was like, how is this even possible? But then you do, and you can do it. So for me, I think Franco's a great coach, and I'm not saying anything of Franco and Gregor in that debate. I'm just answering the question on Franco.
No, that's why I posed it very much.
No.
In the structures of how the contracts are.
100%. But I just speak. Yeah, like for me, I think he's a great coach. I think he could coach any team. Mm-hmm. I think when you get into the nitty gritty of it, like good coaches are good coaches. Like records are records. They speak for themselves. Longevity speaks for itself. With all those, but really impressed with them. I think I'll go back to it again with what's been really interesting to me is like the guys at Glasgow are really mature, like, and they genuinely seem like they are themselves. So that's a testament to any leadership model, culture. That if your players are themselves and performing like they are at Glasgow, that's a good cultural sign of a good coach, man management, whatever it is. But he's savvy. I've also been really impressed with him that he's he's obviously a back by playing terms, but he's coached before I was with Glasgow. He was doing the line outs and things, and so and obviously very well, but he's got a really good sense of the whole. He's got a very good rugby brain.
Mm-hmm. I know I've learned loads from that period in Italy. I was going to say originally that he was coaching his second language, but he's doing that now as well.
Oh, he's probably you sometimes hear him where if he's been home, will then come out with a bit of Afrikaans, and I can understand him because I couldn't get by with that. But then other periods, he'll come out with a bit of Italian. You're like, what is it Italian?
Yeah, he comes out with when he does press
Multilingual.
conferences. He comes out with these phrases
Yeah.
that they're kind of really profound, and you think, like, where did that come from? Because it isn't his first language, and it must be like Italian or Afrikaans that he's translated into Scottish, and it's like, I can't think of a good example of it, but like he's really he's entertaining to listen to, because it's he's just got this kind of very distinct language, like not just distinct language that the
I enjoy his team meetings as well. He's very entertaining. Does things differently as well. Will have humor, which is I'm not humorous, but I appreciate that in him, that he can be a really thoughtful, deep, can show his emotions, but then he's also like it's obvious though, he's really funny. Yeah. And he's not afraid to dress up at a couple things, or like come into a meeting to make a point or a theme, or he's class.
Well, you can know Jamie as a sponsor of Edinburgh's loving all this Glasgow loving.
Let's talk then. While we're on the subject of South Africa and Italy, we'll go into the autumn test, because South Africa beat Italy 32-14, despite Franco Mostart's full red card after 10 minutes, and then go down to 13 men when Marco van Staden was yellow carded on 51 minutes. But like the T1000 in Terminator, you cannot stop this box team. You can rip his face off, take his arm off, and he keeps on coming. Can't be bargained with, can't be reasoned with, doesn't feel pity or remorse or fear, and it absolutely will not stop ever until you are dead. That is...
I can tell I bet you were loving writing that. You're like, yes, the guys are going to love this.
That is a quote from Terminator. And that applies to this Springbok team. They are unbelievable. Yeah. I mean, 2 weeks in a row, straight red card, and then again they get a yellow card, and you think it's like, they look quite good at the early stages of that game, but my God, they just cannot be stopped.
They've evolved a lot as well. So we played them in the summer with Georgia. We actually did really well against them, but it was great then. So I caught up with a lot of them, and Dwayne Vermeulen, who was at Ulster, good friend of mine, he's now coaching the Springboks as well. So and so had a chat with Tony Brown, and it was really cool. Seeing a bit more about them, and there's no surprises to me anyway, as all of us on the outside, but seeing why they are successful and why they've evolved. Like they've still got their just natural, like massive physical men, where rugby's changed beyond recognition really in the last 5-10 years for me. Even go back to the Glasgow game against the Bulls, our last one, I was doing water. I couldn't believe how fast and how big and physical the game was. That was like a personal moment to me. It was like rugby's moved on.
Yeah, but every ex-player says that. I think you just, when you're in it, it must be different.
But that was
every single ex-player goes, a season later, it's like, I couldn't do that like that.
Probably. But I
mean, just think back to like someone like Pierre Spies. Like, he could be. Like, if he played now, you'd be like, there's never been an athlete like him. And that was 15 years ago that he was making his big impact. I think
everyone is more athletic, but with them, I think body composition, let's say, or kilos wouldn't be that much different. But I think everyone's just so conditioned now. Yeah. So in South Africa, there's selection and bomb squads, and yes, everyone should be able to play 80 minutes, but everyone is just so fit that you can come on, and they've got a real balance, I think, now with really good backs. The big difference I think they've really improved on, but because everyone's had to, is kicking, catching, because you can't escort now anymore with the laws, and they've just incorporated a really good game sense whilst not going away from the fact that they'll wear teams down physically, like scrum, maul, set piece, carries, tackles.
Three best teams in the world. South Africa, 1, 2, 3. Their first, second.
Ridiculous depth.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Ridiculous depth.
Thinking about that aspect of the kick chase and the aerial battle, it's amazing that going on to the next game, joy of joys, England coming back from 12-point deficit to beat the All Blacks, but how poor the All Blacks, and then by extension the next game, Australia, were in the air. And you kind of think traditionally those two teams, especially Australia actually with the kind of AFL background that so many of those players have, absolutely dreadful under the high ball. I mean, Australia by the end of that game were kind of giving up on the high ball, but the All Blacks were, Will Jordan, for example, an absolute lethal finisher, but he's not very good under the high ball. And their back three generally, and the way the game is now, especially with the lack of you can't escort your teammate to protect the catcher. Like, that just needs so much work for both those teams, and they're so vulnerable to that. And England were brilliant. And that wasn't obviously just what England did, but it was a huge weapon.
I think it's also a mix of before, when the escorting was in, it was very much the skill was take, whereas now the skill is take oncoming and receiving.
Yeah.
So, i.e., if you're England, Roebuck and Freeman and
Pretty sure
if you've got those, they're incredible at both skills. So both taking, and now it's if your kick's good as well. So you need a good kicker for it to be contestable to get that. But that now is the battle. It's a full contest as opposed to you're just really good. I don't know. Maybe these other teams were really good at organisation and structure and behind, and then you have the odd good player or a good player who can take it up high. But it's changed completely.
I feel sorry for some wingers that they've played almost all their careers, and it wasn't really the bigger issues about getting the ball on the ground, beating your man, scoring tries, and all of a sudden it's like, by the way, your game's completely changed now. See that thing? You're gonna have to start catching it. It was
with no protection at all.
Well, I remember. I'm glad that. Well, I've got out now, so I don't have to play. But I remember there was a while where it was your number 8s would drop off kickoffs and things, and you'd always take a box kick. And there was it happened a couple of times with me. Once, definitely at Ravenhill, the whole crowd was going. But one at my side when Edinburgh then had that season at my side. I remember I was back for a kickoff. But
under those lights.
I was always decent at catching a ball, as in like off a kickoff, a halfway line kickoff. You got loads of time, no problem. But that skill of and contested up and under, I remember having, it was dreadful. How is that? I was like terrifying. Like,
but I go back to the Six Nations this year, and for Scotland, like how amazing Jamie Ritchie was, especially in that Calcutta Cup game that we didn't win, but he was unbelievable at getting up and just getting a massive paw to pat the ball back, and that's a skill that we seem to have just abandoned this autumn. We haven't had anyone doing that. Like Darcy's going up and he's done really well chasing kicks and regathering them, but it hasn't been that aspect, just getting a hand up and doing what Joseph Sueli was doing last November, just getting up and interfering. I don't know why that's tactically we've gone away from that.
I don't know. The first ones that were doing that incredibly well, that I know then a lot of 15s teams would look at, the Fijians and the Sevens, and that certainly off those, because kickoffs are different in Sevens, that was then the big skill that I noticed a lot of that teams trying to take that into the 15s of that one hand up. But I don't know.
Yeah, so that one, England eventually won 33-19, and it really rubbed some salt into Scottish wounds from last week. Wales needed an 83rd minute kick from substitute fly half Jared Evans to defeat Japan 24-23. It was their first win at home since 2023, and the reaction at full time was akin to winning the World Cup.
It was unbecoming.
Things aren't great in Scotland this week, but at least we're not as desperate as that. I mean, it's an absolutely incredible reaction to beat Japan at home by a point in the 83rd minute. Is astonishing.
I actually texted him a Welsh mate afterwards saying, "Did you guys just win the World Cup?"
It was embarrassing, Like you've got to feel for them, but they were lucky.
And as an ex-player and as a coach, how do you feel about the red cards? Like those impacts? Like is that they're all being tall men on a shorter guy? Is it the wrap? Was it were they fair red cards? Was that in that one at the end of the Japan? I was thinking about Mostart's, but then and the one last week, but then also that yellow card at the end of the Wales-Japan game.
I didn't see the Welsh one. Seen the Diaga and Mostart's one. I think from the letter of the law. I suppose I look at it from again probably that holistic of accepting what is. Like I get the reasons for it, as in head contact. The game's never been safer in a full contact game, So, personally, I wouldn't argue with trying to change the law. You're gonna get those and the red. The
law's the law now, isn't it? You know, like you can I can have sympathy for them getting caught, but you can't change the law to protect players and then say, but we're going to turn a blind eye when it's.
Well, Eddie Jones thinks you can.
Yeah,
he wants it.
Yeah, so I think it's quite good that the player doesn't return. He'll get probably a hefty ban, 20 minutes, I think, for the contest of the game. Especially
not if you're Tagburn.
No, no. Well, but especially if it's not like a proper act of foul, intentional, like you've full on clothesline. But I don't have much. You're going to be on either side of it.
Not Baki's Bota coming into rucks with your head and deliberately take off someone's face.
Well, exactly. So none of those of these recent red cards are.
Yeah, but I remember when they first came in, one of the things they talked about, they said, it's going to change people's behaviour and eventually that will all stop. I don't really believe that because I don't think anybody, I think very few people set out to hit people with headshots. So I don't think it will change people's behaviour because it's just people getting caught flat-footed or caught off. So I think it's here to stay. And unless they change the laws, there's always going to be people getting that. I don't think you're going to eradicate the odd high shot because you played at that level. I don't think anybody sets out to do that.
So but equally that by nature of the game, I don't think you will, which is fine, which is the way it is. But then if one person does tend to go higher or is a bit more reckless, let's say not intentional, then they do get a ban, or they then don't continue the rest of the game.
So just catch them.
No, I think
they have those. What are they called? Tackle doctors or whatever it was. What happens there? Like
tackle school.
Tackle school.
Yeah.
Did you ever have to go in?
I never had to do one. I've taken a couple as a coach. The education.
It was quite funny. John DL, when he did press before the All Blacks game, and remember Tom Jordan was having to go to tackle school because Tom's got a bit of history with he's had a few high ones back. And it was probably not like I'm sure the SRU communications or the media guys were like, oh my god, because they said about Tom, has he done the tackle school? Is he going to be available this week? And he said, yeah, he probably failed it. throw your guy under the bus. I mean, he was just joking, but it was there was I just thought it was quite amusing because usually they don't really do that at SRU level, Scottish Rugby level.
There's a few interesting ones over the years. I heard one the other day. George Smith, when he was at Wasps, he got done for a red card and then went into the hearing and he said no to a lawyer and everything, and he just wanted to speak to then the officials and then broke it down so eloquently and what it was, and they were like, oh right, yeah. Fair enough, no ban. Yeah.
Oh man, I mean, one of the all-time greatest defenders of the game's ever seen. Yeah. Other results: France beat Fiji 34-21 in Paris. Ireland beat Australia 46-19.
Bordeaux?
It was in Bordeaux.
Yeah, well done, Roddy.
In Bordeaux. Ireland beat Australia 46-19 at the Aviva, thanks in large part to a first half hat-trick from Mac Hansen playing his first test at fullback and rounded off with 3 tries in the last 10 minutes. Aussie rugby really back in the pits again, winless this autumn. And talking about the pits, let's do it. Sunday, Scotland 33-24 loss to Argentina, having been 21-0 up and absolutely cruising through the first 50 minutes. Scotland collapsed spectacularly in the final half hour, conceding 33 points and scoring just 3. That was something special, wasn't it, guys?
Yeah.
Still shell-shocked.
Barney, tell us from you're in the press box and you said everyone was just kind of...
Yeah, so in the press room afterwards, so it's quite interesting, and there's a wee bit of, how much do you pay attention to X or social media and stuff, but there's all this stuff about Gregor must go, and a few kind of journalists who weren't there or retired journalists saying, they were giving whoever was doing the interview on TNT, they've chickened out the tough question, they should be asking him if he's going to resign. And to be honest, it didn't actually occur to me, I didn't ask directly, you're going to resign. I think he had some tough questions, but they lost to Team 2 places higher than our rankings. I don't think that's resigning. And he's just signed a new contract. So, I don't think. Maybe he should have asked the question just because that's our job is to ask shitty questions. But I didn't feel like that. But the mood in that press room was really, really flat. And that was, it was interesting because among the journalists are usually quite. Roddy will tell you this because well, I'm sure they probably don't. The players probably don't pay any attention to that, but the journalists are usually a bit kind of detached from being up and down in terms of it, because that's not our job. Our job's there to say what's happened, and if something's gone wrong, it's our job to have a bit of a kicking. But it was flat amongst those guys. You could tell everyone was just like a wee bit, which I haven't really felt very much, because we're usually just a wee bit. And Sione was, I mean, he spoke really well. He always speaks really well, but he was really, really down. Gregor can be quite prickly when he's under pressure. When things have gone wrong. But like, I don't think they had a conversation about it. But it was just take it on the chin. There was no kind of pushing back. And then they do what they call a mix zone, and they pick, and you could kind of tell like that the changing room was probably a bit broken, because there's certain guys that always get sent out when the shit's hitting the fan, and it was Kyle Stain, Ewan Ashman's actually really good, Jamie Dobie, and they're kind of guys that just a wee bit more, I don't know, like I think they just like they're the guys that step forward, and and they came out, and I spoke to Kyle Stain, and he was really really brutal on himself, not brutal, yeah, brutal on himself and on the team, and it was a really strange, unusual atmosphere, because we've been there in Scotland, have had disasters in the past, but this one seemed to sting more, and the players were definitely
I mean, on the face of it, as you said, the Argentina ranked 2 places above, beat New Zealand in New Zealand this year, something that we couldn't at the moment even dream of doing, because we don't even get those fixtures. And last year they beat Australia, South Africa.
The National Nation Championship. What's it called? There's fixtures. It came out this morning at 9 o'clock.
I did not see that.
So I'll fill you in. Right. Scotland play in July. They play 3 away games against Argentina, South Africa, and Fiji. Although the Fiji game it's probably going to be at Murrayfield or somewhere in Europe, because I don't think they're going to the Pacific Islands. And then they play New Zealand, Australia, and Japan in November. So that's hot off the. Well, it's not hot off the press.
Yeah, but we're not good. Yeah,
the podcast. It's out now, so just so that people listening to the podcast don't think we've completely missed that. I should highlight that.
But yeah, back to Argentina about that. And the quality last year in the Rugby Championship, they beat all 3 other teams. And going into the game, walking to the ground yesterday with my son, and he was like, "How do you reckon it's going to go today?" I said, "Well, they're a better team than we are. I think it's probably 50-50. I would maybe go 55-45 in Scotland's favour, purely for home advantage. Yeah. But there will be no disgrace if we lose. I think it'll be really tight." It's just the manner of it going. Like they were when we scored just before the intercept, and Scotland went 21-0 up, and we very close to scoring a 4th try before the intercept. I turned to him and said, "Argentina have just brought nothing today. They have offered absolutely nothing, and this is embarrassing for them, and it almost detracts from how well Scotland are doing, because they haven't fired a shot, and then suddenly that just flip of momentum, yellow card, 2 quick tries. They
big bench impact.
Just felt so passive around the pick and goes around on the Scotland line, which from a Glasgow point of view is actually when you watch Glasgow play, the intensity of the defence just seems to step up to like 3-4 levels above where it is the rest of the time when it's anywhere near the red zone and on their own line. And what was your view on the Scottish defence in those?
Yeah, I 100% agree. Losing to Argentina, a team who have beat the perceived big 3 in the last 12 months, ranked 2 space above us, no shame in that. I think the manner in which we lost probably does demand some answers to be had from the more hard-hitting journalist, Barney, who are not scared to ask the questions. Kidding, again, obviously. Was it a mental capitulation? Look, a mate of mine messaged me after the game saying, "Were we missing a Jamie Ritchie or something like that?" And I went, nah, because you've got the backbone of your team in there who, you're not telling me Sione doesn't know how to win. Kyle Stain is an outstanding leader on a rugby pitch. The spine of that team with Dempsey, Brown, there's some hard-nosed Glasgow boys in there. And even, Shuey was on the pitch for 80 minutes. He's been, in my view, a different man since he came back from Australia. To see now he's really stepping up into that leadership role on the international stage. Ashley's come on bounce. There's leaders all over that pitch, and there's winners all over that pitch. And what was it, a capitulation? I think it was fatigue. Yeah. I would, and this is purely Jamie Lindsay's view, and I don't even for a second profess to be. The rugby coaches in Scotland are outstanding rugby coaches, all of them. They understand substitutions. I found it weird, some of the substitutions.
Leaving 3 on the bench was
there was clear fatigue,
and giving Tom Jordan only a minute.
Yes.
So you basically didn't use 4 of your subs.
Yeah, and you brought on. I mean, I think and we forgot to check on this. Darcy Ray, I think that was a tactical substitution.
I thought he limped. He looked like he was limping off.
He limped a wee bit. There was definitely a noise from the coach's box behind us. It's tactical. He said it's tactical. Now I don't know whether they're referring to because it wasn't an HIA, but he came off and then he stayed on the side. But to take your tight head off after 33 minutes, when you know that you're kind of struggling a wee bit at tight head, and you don't have an out second row on the bench, and you've already lost your second row replacement. It's it was like there's a lot of things that just
That was again like later on taking Grant Gilchrist off and putting Bayliss on. It's like just different body shapes completely, and they needed to just have the big body
Bayliss
out there.
Class. Bayliss
he is,
class,
but it was at that stage. You suddenly realised the composition of the bench was compromised.
Yeah.
But I don't know how much Hutchison maybe getting that. No, I don't know how bad that was, or I just don't know how the dynamic changed from Plan A and whether that impacted how he used the subs or anything like that. But
I find that it's really interesting because Gregor's never shy about using the subs.
Yeah.
And to have like guys like Tom Jordan and George Horn, who are guys that like they bring something, whether it's what they needed at that moment, but they needed something. They just needed a change. Like the thing was just swamping them. And it's strange.
Well, it's not like Argentina started throwing it about really loose to get their scores. I mean, they're pretty
Their
much
offloads,
tight.
their offloading game was very, very impressive. But we handled it very well in the first half. Scrum and line-out was good. Stole some line-out ball. Had
You see, I still felt it was a bit flat in the first half.
It was in the crowd. It was very flat.
And I thought,
How much of that was Argentina though as well? Because you're right, they weren't really putting up any kind of contest. I thought our set piece was outstanding in the first half. I thought the scrum was great, the line-out was operating well. Kick chase is still. I need to get you to tell me what it means because I can't understand it.
I do wonder about. We've talked a lot about the kick chase thing, but like there was a really weird kick quite late on. I think it was Jamie Dobie. Like at that point, we just needed the ball, and I wonder whether we've got two.
Well, that's what happened in the All Blacks.
With this kicking game.
The All Blacks game happened as well. He came on and he was box kicking on their 40 late on, and it's like, no, we've got to keep we cannot give away up possession because we're not. It's not one of those situations where, say, the Ireland Australia game where Ireland by the end were just putting any bomb up they wanted and they were getting the ball back, or it was complete chaos in the backfield.
Yeah,
we had to keep hold of the ball. I felt, but again, from a coaching and that point of view,
Roddy's not very quiet.
I know, but that's why I'm trying to only bring you in from a coaching point of view. In those scenarios where you kind of is it feeling like you're just battering on a wall and you're not getting through, that's when you want to throw up a box kick, just try and break up the field a wee bit.
So box kicks in general, there's a whole array, right? So you can either kick from 9 and go long, and then your defense line will then make the tackle. They might play 1 or 2 phases and they'll kick it back, in which case you've got counter-attack opportunities. So you can then run at X, Y, and Z, or they shift up and then you can kick again into the space. You can then go a box kick, which is then contestable. So you then give yourselves the opportunity, I suppose, to steal the ball. You have that one-on-one contest. Pros and cons to that. They might win it, scraps, balls around, and you get breaks from it. But I think kicking is it's a way of putting on pressure. How you do that or what you pick, I think the reasons are based on your team, the personnel, philosophy on how you want to play. So it varies greatly in terms of, box kicking as such. Like England would, like even in that England game at the weekend against All Blacks, like they still box kicked in the opposition half. They even did one, I think Mitchell did one a little bit too long, but it was still into the 22. So if they didn't win it with, say, Roebuck, they got a mark, which they did. Yeah. But that's still their intention of it is it's a one-on-one. If Roebuck catches that, they're in the 22.
Yeah.
So it's a very tactical thing as to where you use it, And then you've got the chips. If you've got a winger running past the ruck to get it, again, it's all how the defense preview, and a lot of that will be done in your analysis as to the teams might go more frontline focused and not have a 9 that they'll put him in the front line and not have him to cover chips, and you're trying to cover that with your centers. So if you are going to go for a chip or try break them down, like that's an option. And that might come from a winger just seeing that space. Let's give it a go, you know. But yeah, there's a whole range as to why you do it, whether it's prep, whether it's individuals, skill set. But then you still got to execute as well. So it's you know, it's a hard, yeah.
So we've got one more game against Tonga next weekend. But how do we view the autumn? Because I think the expected bar was 3 wins. We're going to get, unless something goes horribly wrong, like Aberdeen 2012, was it?
Yeah.
That, you know, we're not going to lose that one. So we get 2 wins, 2 losses, and the expectation was 3 wins. Hopefully, what's the impact of this?
Well, the impact is, I don't think, you know, the World Cup. They wanted to be in the top 6.
They needed to win all 4 to do that.
Yeah. No, I think they could have beaten Argentina by 16 yesterday.
Okay.
And then the other results would, and they needed Argentina and Australia to lose the remaining games, which is, you know, because I think it was Australia playing France and Argentina playing England.
Yeah.
So they've kind of missed out on that. I'm not sure that it's disastrous because the new World Cup's format is, you know, they're going to get through. It does mean they're probably going to pay one of the big dogs. Well, they're going to pay one of the big dogs in the pool stage, which they'd probably rather not have to do, and they probably could have a slightly harder first knockout game.
Yeah.
It's not the end of the world.
It's not the end of the world.
I think it's pretty damaging in terms of morale. You know, if you like the calendar year, all the big games they've lost. You know, they lost to France, England, Ireland, Fiji, which is a bad one, New Zealand, this. And so when you've got a new coach a coach with a new contract who, you know, is under a bit of pressure because he's been there for a long time. There's a perception that he's never really been accountable. He's not really had a director of rugby that's been on top of him, and he has taken another job on the side, which, you know, like people have opinions on. It's not great. It's not. It's I think Gregor Townsend's under a lot of pressure now that he could have done without. Basically, what do you think, Jamie?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I know that players will be hurting after that. How much will they lead the reaction to that? Again, Tonga's not an easy game either.
No, but it'll be much the same team, I imagine, that played the USA will be going out for that game.
Yeah.
So those other guys, the main frontline guys from the last 2 weeks, are going to have to sit on that till January.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Does that change now? I don't know. I think there's a good chance that all of a sudden, you know, the likes of Finn and people who probably wouldn't have been used, like, I don't know, maybe not.
I don't see Finn.
Was there any injury updates after the press?
No. That was another failure of the journalist. Because normally, in that fairness, that's one that we should have asked. That was, you know, that's normally one of the first questions you asked. So no, I think I did actually text Michael Lamont, the media manager, this morning to say, "Is there any squad update?" We hadn't read it by the time we started this pod. So.
Yeah, so I don't know. I can't see that many. Well, remains to be seen. It's only Monday morning. Any concluding points would you like to make? I'd love to touch on the Red Bull thing, because you said earlier that you had some thoughts on Red Bull coming into rugby and the impact that might have.
Yep. We were generally chatting earlier on, and here's my take on it. It kind of feeds back into a point that Roddy made at the start of the pod, where the game needs something. It is dwindling. And one of the things it definitely needs, and Breadalbane are not even remotely close to that level, is big money coming in. Chris, I don't want to go down any rabbit holes here, but I mean, I'm sure there's something we could do if Saudi Arabia wanted to bring money in. I'm not sure I'd like that. I prefer somebody like Red Bull, who could bring massive investment into the game. Now, does that come into Scottish rugby? I don't know. And I know the argument at the minute with Gregor being involved is, and especially the harshest critics will be sitting there saying he's distracted from Scotland because he's spending his time with Red Bull. I personally don't believe that's the case. Has been a professional rugby coach for a long time. He's more than capable of giving a day a month, or whatever it is, on an advisory role without compromising. And he's got good people around about him. But let's say that's the deficit side of the ledger. What's the positive side? Well, for a start, having somebody, the head of our Scottish Rugby men's playing programme, having direct contact with Red Bull commercially can only be a good thing, because if he will, because I think he can be a very positive, articulate ambassador for the Scottish game, and I think if Red Bull respond to that, I think the money could find its way into our game. Now, how does that structurally work commercially with the way the SIU is set up, and would that money go into grassroots? Could you potentially see Red Bull Jed Forrest playing or something along that? I don't know.
I think they would be thrilled with that.
I think they'd probably delighted in Jed. But it is that, I'm just trying to find the other side of the balance sheet where the game does need something generally on a global scale. Are Red Bull the worst people to come in and do that? Absolutely not. We've seen the impact they've had in F1. We've seen the impact they have in some of the Major League Soccer in America and with New York and some of the other. I know they do
the X Games. They do a lot of these kind of.
They're into paddle now, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're starting to throw money at paddle, which is kind of cool, but also weird. But if they're willing to put that kind of support behind rugby as a sport, which we all agree needs something, and if there's even half a chance that Gregor's influence can direct some of that first tranche coming back into the Scottish game, I only see that as a positive in the balance sheet. And commercially, it comes back to what you're saying at the start. Where does the money come from to support the grassroots of this game? It's Scottish Rugby give money to the grassroots. Again, we can do a whole podcast on whether I think that's correctly allocated here or there. But it's not enough. It needs more. Every single rugby club I speak to, funding is one of their biggest barriers to either attracting new players, to making sure the facilities are accommodating and attractive to young people coming into the game. So why would we... I think the potential upside slightly outweighs the potential downside, and commercially something needs to happen from some private investment. It's not going to come from Breadalbane, because I've got Roddy's salary to pay. It's expensive bill of load. Give him a couple of years, Jamie. You'll be it needs somebody on that level, I think, to make an impact. And so, whether that's Gregor's motivation or not, I've got no idea. Can't speak from, won't speak from. But I think just having him involved in Red Bull could have a commercially positive impact that offsets the downside of him being distracted. Yeah. You look entirely cynical about that.
No, I think I agree with you in that sense, but I can understand why people raised an arch eyebrow, and I think it was badly communicated as well. I think they should have got right in front of it and said, Gregor's signing a new contract. Part of his new contract is he's working 30 days, and just instead of it sneaking out and but that's they're going to have to and I think the implications of that carry on for a long time. It's not just the case that people grumble on the day. That's just. It started off, looking like a negative, and it's very hard to bring people back on the right side of it. Yeah. But I agree with you on the commercial side. I'm not convinced. I don't know. You're more of a commercial animal than me, Jamie. But I'm not convinced that Gregor as a head coach is the guy that's like that. Yeah, it's not going to do any harm.
No, he's not, and I don't think that he's overtly trying to push that agenda. Yeah. I just think by sheer association, if Red Bull do decide to widen their commercial. Output into the game, then it will do us no harm having a direct line with Gregor. Yeah, because it won't just be, it'll be the commercial people he's speaking to. Yeah, and that creates a dotted line right to the money guys, which is not a bad thing.
Well, that is a nice positive to end on.
Can I end on a positive?
Yes.
I've got a subject. So, just coming up to the 1872 games, 2 games. I know over the years you guys have, as an Offside Line, have done a good job in promoting the 2. I just think, especially with coming back into it now to Scottish Rugby, 2 games back to back, both teams gone well so far this season. Personally, the Hampden game, I've never been to Hampden before, so that's the Glasgow leg, Edinburgh leg will be at Murrayfield, like 2 big stadiums. I think, so as a side note, so where Glasgow, like the Warriors, have done a great job is, and I've noticed this coming in, is their link to grassroots rugby, both through clubs, youth stuff, like GHA have got millions of youth players. I just got sent this today because it's cool though, and I think it's a model, I suppose, for pro teams, but the link. So with a Hampden game, so Ma Minis, they've already bought 90 tickets, 90 from one club. Carrick 72, GHA expecting to bring 200 people. Last year they brought 300. So stuff like that.
Very cool.
And on the point, so Jamie obviously, Mark Robertson, Robbo. So he's always said something to me that's resonated, and then especially, and that's probably why I'd always make a point as a player, now as a coach. No one cares about coaches, but interacting with grassroots or kids. So Robbo said one of his big, I'm not speaking on behalf of him because he said it in the public domain, but one of his big inspirations was growing up in Melrose, and you had like Chick around, and it was like this, and the list was endless. Yeah, but it was this touch point of like internationals. They're accessible, and you see it with kids now. If they even just see or like get a picture or get a signed jersey from someone, how the elite is possible. They're not like it's attainable. So anyway, so that's the link of, I think, if we can get two teams going well, really get big crowds, like, and I get the draw, and they're all important, like the two losers or whatever, but it is your two pro teams playing together. You can really get the crowds to that. Big stadiums, Murrayfield, Hampden, like, get those up, and it's that link to the roots.
Back to the days when you're playing at Myerside, like the fact you're playing big games at.
No, well, exactly. But then even like kids, coming to a game, like going to Murrayfield, going to Hampden is like awe-inspiring, and then you see it, and I think personally that's a great push in the year of that Christmas, December time.
My favourite thing
Scottish
about
rugby.
Christmas, which probably says more about me than anything else. 2 legs in 1872.
Yeah. But it's so important, because we can all say grassroots is important, or the state of the game. But if we're not doing anything, as I'm not saying to you, but collectively, parents or kids or whatever, like, that's the one, it's Scottish rugby's biggest game apart from internationals. 2 games, like...
I think, can you remember what it was at Murrayfield last year? It was well north of 30,000.
Yeah.
It broke through
Was it record? Was it record?
It was a record,
yeah.
I can't remember.
I think it was like 42 or something like that, wasn't it?
I thought it was it might have broken 40 actually, but that's incredible. I mean, that's huge. Yeah.
So what Pete will do is he'll go away and check that, and then he'll slice it in like he's the
And I'll say, I think it was 42,380.
Yeah.
To the number.
Other fixtures this weekend. So Wales play New Zealand at 3:10. Poor old Wales. Ireland play South Africa at 5:40. France play Australia at 8:10. And the big one of the weekend, Italy, Chile, also at 8:10. And then on Sunday, Scotland, Tonga at 1:40 and England, Argentina at 4:10. In the women's Prem, bigger welcome, Hillhead, Jordan Hill, Cartha host Geary, Heriots travel to Stirling County, and Watsonians host capital rivals Corstorphine. Men's Prem returns to a full roster of action. GHA welcome Hoyk, Hawks host Ayr, Heriots face Melrose at Golden Acre, Watsonians travel down to Kelso, and Selkirk host Curry. And I just want to say thank you very much, gents. It's been a pleasure being here at HQ. Where are we, Barney?
Breadalbane.
We are.
Breadalbane HQ.
That has been brilliant. Thank you so much, guys.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Brilliant. We'll be back in your ears next week. Barney, I will see you then. Guys, let's do this again another time. That'd be great.
Always.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.
It's the offside line.
This is not soccer. Is that clear?
On goes Stanger. Stanger could be there.